Hey YA nerds, my name is Kaye and I like to read a lot. So welcome to another video. Sorry I missed last week. Life's been a little bit crazy since I started going back to work. I know that sounds silly, since I should just be happy to be going back to work, but it's just kind of finagled my schedule a little bit. So I'm actually recording this the morning that it's due, like I have a project. But happy to be doing a video again, and happy to have my hair back because it's starting to reach lengths I never imagined it to get to. So anyway, that's what's going on with me. Today I want to talk about Pet by Akwaeke Emezi, and I probably pronounced that wrong and I'm sorry. But yeah, so here's Pet. Sorry about the reflections. It's a really cool looking book. You can't really tell in the video, but the title is a little iridescent, a little bit gold. And that's part of what caught my attention about this really beautiful book. I was like, that title though, so nice. And I actually read an advanced reader copy of this book. I got it last summer, but I read it only last December or November or something like that. Cool story about this book. First of all, let me get the details out of the way. It's 308 pages, so like a quick and easy read. And it was published last September, on September 10th, 2019. And I read it as part of doing a mock Prince Award. I might have talked about this before. So a bunch of librarians get together and they talk about the Prince Award, which is a prestigious award named after Michael L. Prince or J. Prince, one or the other. Sorry, I'm really misinformed. But anyway, it's awarded to YA books every year, and it's usually like the best of the best, the cream of the crop, that kind of thing. Last year when I did it for the 2018-2019 season, Elizabeth Acevedo's book won The Poet X. I read that book, and actually my committee, the Mock Prince committee that I was on, actually selected that book to win. Not that we had anything to do with the Prince Award, but it's just a fun exercise for librarians to do. So we all voted for that one to win, and then it actually won the award. So I like going to these committees. I think they're fun. I think they're a great exercise in, like, examining text and talking about it, critically and logically with other librarians. Also, it's fun to get to meet other librarians at these things and, show them my chops. So we talked about Pet extensively in this book and in this committee. And this book was really dividing. Not because it has anything controversial in it or anything like that. It's just like either you loved it or you hated it. It's like it was one or the other. A lot of the librarians had a really hard time wrapping their minds around this book, and I will get into why in my review, because I do talk about, or in the plot, I guess, because I do talk about it a little bit. But yeah, so that's how I got introduced to this book, really. I got the advanced reader copy, the ARC, and then didn't touch it, and then it was like, oh, it's going to be on the Mock Prince. Well, now I'm definitely going to read it, and I sat down and got through it in like 2 days. So I don't know why I put it off so long. Sometimes it just happens with me with my huge pile of books. Also of note, this book was nominated for the National Book Award for Young People's Books, or Young People's Literature, and it was also nominated for the Locus Award for Best YA Book. It was also a finalist in the National Book Award, so it is a really well-written, really nice book. Well, nice is not the right word. Well-written, interesting, of note, etc. So the plot of this book is kind of complicated, in that it takes place in the future where there's no more crime. The society is supposed to be a utopian society because the world has gotten rid of monsters. And monsters could be anything from, like, the corrupt politician to the abuser to the murderer, anyone who's like deemed like bad or against the advancement of society. So it is a direct commentary on like our world currently in 2020. It's actually a very interesting read if you read it right now in 2020, because you'll notice a lot of parallel lines that Emezi, the author, has drawn between our current day world and this world that they've invented. So we follow the main character Her name is Jam. She is a trans girl of color. She has 2 loving, supportive families. And one of the first things that really caught my attention about this book, and it's important to the plot, is that she mentions she's trans, and the way that she comes out to the reader is wonderful. I loved that whole part of it. And she makes a point to tell us that in her society, being trans is a great thing, because now they just give you an implant in your arm, and pretty much puberty blockers happen, hormone treatments happen, transition's just much easier in this world that Emezi has created. And I appreciated that. I thought that was really well thought out, because a lot of times when you have like a sci-fi or fantasy and you put a trans character in there, it's kind of like, well, are we going to talk about transition in this world, or are we going to just ignore it and pretend like, oh no, it's a cool thing, like we don't even need to talk about it? So to talk about it in this really wonderful way, I thought was really neat. I thought it was really well done. But anyway, Jam's mother is an artist, but she doesn't really paint so much anymore. And we don't really know why as the reader, until Jam goes into her studio and sees a new painting that she's created. And it's of this creepy looking monster, like an actual, like we consider monster, like Mothman or the Yeti, or, you know, that kind of stuff, like a monster, like this terrifying monster. And she notices that in the painting there are razor blades. And I was like, this is crazy. And for some reason, Jam gets like this weird dizzy spell, and she falls into the painting and slashes her hand open, and her blood brings this monster to life. And they, it goes back and forth, call themselves Pet. And they tell Jam, I'm here to slay a monster. So Jam's been told her entire life that, you know, we live in this perfect society. There are no monsters. The angels got rid of them. By angels, I mean good people. Got rid of them in like this crazy fight that happened. But now Pet is here, and Pet is some kind of supernatural monster who says, well, monster's the wrong word for Pet, a creature. He's a supernatural creature who says to Jam, no, there's a monster here, and I'm here to hunt it and get rid of it, and I need your help. And the book goes from there. So really fascinating, really interesting take on like this world that we could have possibly if we got rid of all the monsters. But also I found it fascinating that, yeah, all the monsters are gone, or at least you think they are. Like, the world can never be perfect. And it's up to us to try to make it so. Even when society tells us, like, no, this is as good as it's gonna get, like, it can probably be better. And this is as good as it's gonna get. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes this is as good as it's gonna get for white people. Everyone else is below us. Or this is as good as it's gonna get for straight cis people. Everyone else is below them. So, like, I feel like Pet especially kind of examines that in a very interesting way. There's a couple of tropes for this book. I actually want to start explaining why I chose the tropes in the video, because I feel like I'm just listing things and then being like, make up your own opinion. So, as always, the tropes are a series of phrases and words that I chose based on some fan fiction, but also some YA books. You know, we have very stereotypical ones like The Chosen One, which has been around forever. And I just like to use them to describe books so that you kind of know what you're getting into. Because I feel like if you like a certain trope, you know, you want to read it over and over again. And so if I'm describing a book using a trope, maybe that means you'll like it. Who knows? For this book, I chose Clueless Adults. And I chose that because Jam's parents and some of the other adults in the book kind of have no idea what Jam's going through, that Pet is around, that there's a monster amongst them. So they're a little clueless. Dystopian Future, which I know that Jam lives in a utopia, but the appearance of a monster makes it kind of feel a little dystopian, and I could be stretching that a little bit. But, Only One Friend in the World. Jam's best friend's name is Redemption, and they are best friends, but sometimes things come between them and they have it out, and they don't talk for a while, so... Undiscovered Powers, Jam falling into the painting and slicing her hand open to awaken the creature that is Pet. She didn't know that she could do that. She didn't know that her blood had that ability. So, Unusual Names, Jam, Redemption, Moss, I think, is another character's name. So all of the people's names in the book are like verbs or nouns or like normal words that we use in our society, whereas like their city, which some cities are named after items or things or whatever, their city is called Lucille. So I thought that was really interesting. Wrecking Ball endings, can't talk about that because it's about the end of the book and I don't spoil things unless I have to. But the ending killed me. Like the last 3 chapters murdered me. And Youths in Danger. So Jam and Redemption are kind of like on their own with Pet, trying to figure out what to do about this monster, and it kind of puts them like a little bit in danger. So that wasn't too bad. So, for read-alikes for this book, I got 2 from Goodreads and 2 from Novelist, and as always, Goodreads gave me some weird things and Novelist was a little more spot on, and I actually read the descriptions of these books, so I'm going to try to remember what I read and tell you guys about these books. So, for Goodreads, we have Look Both Ways by Jason Reynolds, whom I adore. Look Both Ways is about 10 different kids coming home from school. The description on Goodreads says that a bus fell from the sky, but I don't know if that's really the case or if it's something that one of the characters made up in the book. I don't know, I haven't read it. So it's a story following children coming home from school when something happens, but like it tells the different perspectives and how they all notice it. Goodreads also gave me All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, which is a memoir written by George M. Johnson about his life growing up as an LGBTQ youth. The struggles he's endured, the bullying he's gone through, his experiences with other queer people, in his relationships, etc. So, not entirely sure what these two have to do with Pet. I mean, Pet is a very different, interesting book that I've never really seen before, but like neither of these books has any supernatural or fantasy elements in them, really. I mean, maybe Look Both Ways does, and I don't know. Neither of these books deals with, society in an interesting way like Pet does. So I don't know why Goodreads is recommending things like this. Maybe it's page number, maybe it's queer content, I don't know. Anyway, Novelist gave me I Crawl Through It by A.S. King. That's about a couple of different teenagers trying to get through like exams and standardized testing and the SATs, etc. And they realize, I think, as they're trying to avoid their trauma and like their problems, etc., that they really just have to crawl through it. They just have to get through it. Whether they want to avoid whatever has happened to them in their lives, they really can't, and the only way out is through. I think that does relate a little bit to Pet, in terms of like the thematicness of it, because towards the middle of the book, Jam has been denying Pet the whole, like in the beginning, like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to hunt monsters. Pet convinces her into it, and I think at some point in the middle, she realizes that, like, the only way out is through. So I agree with this connection. And then the other book that was recommended was Clay by David Almond. I love David Almond. I talked about Kit's Wilderness a couple of weeks ago. Love his stories. Clay is about 2 boys who are friends who befriend a new boy, and the new boy can make clay creatures come to life, and is trying to teach one of the boys how to do it. And they end up bringing this life-size clay model to life, and the clay model's name is Clay. Haha. They bring Clay to life, and one of the original 2 boys has to then question, like, what have I done? So it's a little bit like Frankenstein-y, in my opinion. Like, what have I wrought upon the earth? And I could see how this book relates also to Pet. How one of the characters inadvertently or on purpose brings a monster or a creature to life, and then has to kind of like deal with the repercussions. So I get novelists thinking. Goodreads is still a mystery to me. For my review of this book, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 because it was fantastic. I don't currently own it because I lent out my advanced reader copy to somebody, and then we had a pandemic. But maybe I'll get it back. I'll put it on my bookshelf because it's really only like this big. I mean, it's not a big book by any stretch of the imagination. And it's good. Like, I'm only giving it a 9 out of 10 because somebody pointed out to me, like, you know, when you give everything a 10 out of 10, it makes it sound disingenuous. And I did have a few minor problems with the book, so that knocks off one little star. But other than that, I really did love the way it was written. I mentioned it earlier. I enjoyed the fact that all the characters had different interesting names than what we're used to. It kind of puts you more into the reality of the book. And I do really like the idea that until we get rid of the monsters in our lives, we're not going to be able to succeed as a society. And that's, I think, bottom line, I think that's what this book is telling us, or telling me at least. As always, you're allowed to have your opinion about a book. This is my opinion about this one. And if you want to share that with me, you can always comment down below, reach out to me on Twitter. Right now on Twitter, I am tweeting a lot of things that are not book related. Sorry. But yeah, so that's really all I have to say about Pet. You can look at the beautiful cover again. So gorgeous, lovely. And next week, I might be talking about, I just finished All American Muslim Girl by Nadine Jolie, forgot last name. Really good. But I'm also working on The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta, which I love, and I'm probably going to finish it by next week. So I'll have a toss-up of which book I'm going to talk about next. Both of them are really cool and interesting, and I think both of them are own voices stories, which I'm really into and I'm excited to get back into. So that's all I have to say for this week. I guess you can like and subscribe. Whatever. And I guess I'll see you guys next week. So peace out, nerds.